Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's really great to always play in front of people, and what a nice welcome crowd, so thank you for that. We're not going to do the great reveal and the walk-on, but please enthusiastically welcome the great Gene Di Novi to the stage. So how I've structured the next hour was part history lesson, but don't worry, there's not a quiz or an exam at the end of this. Obviously, Gene, having the good fortune to be a very vibrant 96-year-old, has had a lot of history and is incredibly integral to... Can you believe it? Yeah. Is incredibly integral to popular music, whether we're talking about Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Lena Horne, Shirley Horn, Frank Zappa. I mean, just about every musician that you can think of, Gene has impacted in a certain way. So we will be talking about that. In addition, we're going to play some of his more famous compositions and, of course, compositions of his choosing. So we've got 3 selections chosen. And to back us up with that momentous role, that will be the great Lauren Falls on acoustic bass. So I thought I would start. First of all, I love this photograph. I mean, I love your suit, first of all, Gene, in this picture, and your glasses. I'm very jealous of both of them. But I thought we would start just at the beginning. That, of course, is Gene with Duke Ellington, and that is a little bit later of a photo from the time period that we're about to begin by speaking about. But as I wrote here, Gene was born in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, in New York, in 1928. Just a couple of talking points, Gene. You know, your sister gave you your first piano, which I know you still have at age 12. Maybe you could mention Chuck Wayne. And just some of that time period when you were playing on the New York early scene in the 1940s.
Well, it seemed to be I got into 3 or 4 places where I confused everybody with. If I'd stayed with one thing, you'd have heard of me. But I'm behind, first of all, being a jazz player.
Yes.
Secondly, to be an accompanist to piano. I played for every young lady in New York City in those days, you know. Then I went to, so that was, New York was busy with that stuff.
Yeah.
And then came, let's see who we've got left here. We've got, you played an incredible 1940s Gene Di Novi thing.
I did, sure, I can play that. Yeah, I've got this structured, Gene, sort of geographically. So we start in New York, we move to Los Angeles, and then, of course, north to Toronto. So if I jump ahead, how about this photo, Gene? Who's in this picture?
Oh, these are great guys. This was on 52nd Street, you know.
In New York.
Off of 7th Avenue. Max Roach. And Chuck Wayne and Clyde Lombardi. I mean, it's incredible times.
And Stan Hasselgaard, right?
Stan Hasselgaard from England, from Sweden.
Yeah.
So I was exactly 20 years old there.
Yeah. So for those that don't know everybody, obviously Max Roach is one of the most famous drummers of all of jazz. Chuck Wayne is a wonderful guitar player and accompanist and composer. In fact, the song Solar that maybe many of you...
He was the most important.
Chuck Wayne was.
I learned from him in the beginning, yeah.
He was your teacher, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about his most famous composition that is incorrectly accredited to Miles Davis?
Oh, well, Miles used to steal from everybody.
So if you know the song Solar by Miles Davis, it's actually a song called Sunny, which was originally written by Chuck Wayne, who's the gentleman with the cigarette and the great tie at the front there.
Yeah.
And Stan Hasselgaard, who looks a bit like Matt Damon, I've always thought, he was a Swedish sort of clarinetist who had taken a lot of the bebop vocabulary and then moved it to the clarinet.
Yeah, Benny Goodman had brought him over to New York to teach him to play bebop,
right.
Which was interesting, you know.
Yeah. And he died, yes, in a car crash?
Yeah.
Yeah, very tragic.
Wow, yeah.
At a young age, yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, so yeah, Benny Goodman, of course, who maybe many of you are familiar with, always was sort of he tried to play bebop. He did some recordings in that, but he's really more of a swing musician, as probably many of you know. And
Was he ever?
yes, and he brought Stan Hasselgaard over to teach him. Okay, here we have Dizzy Gillespie, obviously, and you comping furiously behind him.
He used to call me Bebop Baby.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So the story is you're 15 years old at the Spotlight.
Right.
Nat Jaffe doesn't show up for the gig.
That's right.
And do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. Well, I used to stay outside. The clubs were about 4 on one side and 4 on the other, so you could walk down that block and listen to Lester Young as you were walking, you know, or Dizzy, or Charlie Parker, or whoever came by. All you had to do was stand on the street corner. It was incredible. Yeah. Like a movie set without anybody taking any pictures. Really.
And I guess there were so many gigs that some people would double book themselves, wouldn't show up. So if you had the wherewithal to hang around, you got an opportunity.
Well, that's what the Bebop Baby thing was. When Nat Jackie didn't show up, Dizzy said, "Come up here and play." And I said, "What?" You know, Dizzy Gillespie asked me to play, you know. And he said, "Okay." He says, "You're a Bebop Baby, but you'll do."
Nice. Well, speaking of Bebop Babies, I think one of the most interesting recordings is this one. So this is from 1946. I'll play a little bit of it. This is Aaron Sachs, who's a great clarinetist, and his Manor Rebops. Terry Gibbs, right, on vibraphone, Gene Di Novi, Clyde Lombardi, and Tiny Khan. Tiny Khan was a wonderful drummer, and it's called Tiny's Khan. And I note up here that this is 11 months prior to a more famous composition called Donna Lee, so have a listen.
Right.
So fairly uncanny, I guess, or very similar, based on the same theme in many ways. Yeah.
Well, play the piano solo.
Okay.
It's
excuse
in
me.
there somewhere.
Excuse me. My mistake. Sorry. Okay, I will go back. I apologize, Gene.
Terry Gibbs. Thank you.
Yeah, Gene, very, very nice.
Imagine 1940.
Amazing. Well, why don't we listen to one more, and then maybe we'll play a tune together. This is a little bit after that, 1947, and this is with the great Lester Young, a recording that was done, again with Chuck Wayne, so the guitar player that I mentioned earlier, with Curly Russell, the great Curly Russell, and Tiny Khan, who's the drummer you heard on that. And this was Leonard Feather that put this recording session together, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about maybe how that came about?
We owed a lot to him because he helped us through those early periods.
Right, yeah. And Lester Young was okay to work with not his usual musicians?
No, he wasn't thrilled to come to play with us
Right.
because, but Leonard wanted to get a rhythm section, in those days, a modern rhythm section.
Right.
Which, because Lester had some not too good guys in his band,
Right.
So he said, come on in here, I want you guys to play.
Right.
So we sat down and played for him. But Lester was not thrilled about that. He had his own language. He said, if my kiddies were here, my kiddies were his guys, He said, if my kiddies were here, they would know what to do,
Right, yeah.
So.
Well, it turned out pretty well.
Turned out pretty well, and he started to like the rhythm section, which was interesting.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. These kids won them over,
Nice.
Of course, we weren't planning on recording with Lester Young.
Yeah.
We were just hanging out there,
So let's have a quick listen. I'm not going to play the whole thing, Gene, but I'll play
Okay.
some of this. This is East of the Sun. So I hate to cut it off, but there's a wonderful identifiable sound of Lester Young. So before we go to the next one, which is, of course, we spoke earlier of Benny Goodman, and Benny Goodman did, as I mentioned, try and play bebop, and he actually hired some real bebop musicians to accompany him, including Gene, but also, of course, Fats Navarro, the great trumpeter, and Wardell Gray. So we'll get a chance to listen to that momentarily, but why don't we play a tune? I asked Gene about the sort of music from that time period, and we've chosen an old standard that would have been called, this is It's You or No One.
It's you or no one, okay.
Yeah, Gene, wonderful as always. So, yeah, maybe I'll play just a little bit of the melody of this. This was Benny Goodman recording for Capitol Records, Stealin' Apples, which is actually an old tune. It's an Andy Razov, Fats Waller, older composition that he tried to sort of update with a bebop sound by hiring a number of musicians that you can see listed here, but certainly Fats Navarro and Wardell Gray. So there's a story behind it, right? Because it was a benefit for Damon Runyon, is that correct?
I don't know that
Oh,
story.
yeah, I think that is right, but yeah. Okay, well, why don't we have a listen? I'm sorry to cut it off, but what a wonderful recording that is and the opportunity to do that. I mentioned that I was going to be structuring this a bit geographically, so then how come you leave New York and go to Los Angeles?
Because there was a whole new set of people to learn from.
Right.
God, it was amazing. I wish I could have gotten all of them in my lifetime. But David Raxon, Hugo Friedhofer, Marty Page, Johnny Mandel, incredible musicians in LA at that time, inventing a whole new way of making music, really, you know. So, and not only that, the sun shone every day, you know.
The weather, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were in Laguna Beach, is that right?
Yeah, Laguna Beach. Isn't that got a funny sound? It's a wonderful place, incidentally.
Yeah.
You know, you could live there very nicely, and my daughter does, Denise. I have two daughters. The two of them live in California. Michelle lives in Woodland Hills, and Denise Di Novi, a very important lady producer. Denise Di Novi got a wonderful house in Laguna.
Right.
And it was another world, no kidding about it. But the guys, just to be around them, you know.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being a studio guy.
Right.
Who got to meet all of them, including crazy, wonderful Frank Zappa. It always surprises people. He would call us up, you know. He'd call up and say to the contractor, he'd tell the contractor, get me those guys you got me the last time, those guys, you know, who were Marty Page and Victor Feldman.
Right.
There's a guy that you should look into. From England originally, the most natural jazz player of all, I think.
Yeah,
Victor Feldman, yeah.
They played many instruments, vibraphones, piano, drums.
Yeah.
He's on a bunch of Steely Dan recordings. He's on a lot of great
he
jazz
was my
recordings.
favorite drummer, right.
Yeah.
And he played, like you say, the vibes and everything.
Yeah.
And he was a sweet man.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you. Yeah. Just a couple of things that I
We
wanted to...
lost him, but anyhow.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Zappa stuff in a moment, but yeah, Gene is listed. There's Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, and then there's a whole subcategory on the album called Auxiliary Mothers, and Gene Di Novi is listed as an auxiliary mother. Yeah. And yes, and your daughter Denise is a great film producer, and she was Tim Burton's partner for a long time.
That's right,
Made a lot of movies. Yeah, one of my favorite jokes that Gene tells is he says, "These are my two children. This is Denise, and this is DeNephew." But it was actually Denise and Michelle, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Well, speaking of the West Coast, yeah, I had some highlights here, Gene. Nancy Wilson, Lena Horne, Percy Faith.
Well, I became a songwriter, seriously,
Yes.
by that time.
Yeah, I thought we would play one of your songs here, and then also we can play your most famous song together. But do you want to talk about any of the people on here, Nancy Wilson or Lena Horne, or your time with some of these musicians?
Well, why don't you play the Carmen McRae?
Okay, sure. So this is thank you. This is a beautiful composition written by Gene and arrangement, yes?
Right.
Yeah, it's called Boy, Do I Have a Surprise for You, and it was sung by Carmen McRae and recorded in 1967.
Who was a wonderful musician, you know. Yeah. Wow.
So I'm going to play this whole song. It's not very long, but I'll play the whole thing because it's really beautiful.
Do I have a surprise for you? Gee, I can hardly wait to tell you. I won't drop a hint. I won't give a clue. I will only say that it's new and shiny. It's free. Boy, do I have a surprise for you. Surprise. Your surprise is me.
Yeah, that's a wonderful composition. It's so beautiful, and what an arrangement.
Thank you so much for playing it.
Yes. Why don't we play what I think is your most famous composition? You mentioned Victor Feldman. I know he recorded it. Who else has recorded Have a Heart?
Oh gosh, Dick Hyman.
Dick Hyman,
Mike Renzi.
Mike Renzi,
um, George Shearing.
George Shearing. Yeah. A very well-dressed guitar player who likes orange glasses and nice suits. Remember, you know?
Oh.
I recorded it with, and you wrote the liner notes to the record, but no, that's okay.
There you go.
Yeah, many fine musicians. Of course,
You filled it out.
I guess, and you of course have recorded it yourself numerous times as well. Yeah. Shall we play it?
All right. Let's
Okay.
do
So
it.
this is Have a Heart.
I wrote a little chart on it. We'll probably, we might lose our place, but we'll try it anyway. Okay. First of all, let me play 1 in E and work our way down to, or up to F. Let's see if that works.
And Nancy Wilson, too, yes?
Right.
Nancy Wilson, of course. I think on one of the records that I have, I think on A Touch of Today on the top left for Capitol. I think that's the record that she recorded that on. So what a wonderful composition, and it's been, and certainly played live by countless musicians as well. Okay, so yeah, here it is. That's the record we were speaking about briefly. That's the famous Freak Out by the Mothers of Invention with the auxiliary mothers, including yourself.
You know, the Lung folk in those days loved him, you know. He
Yeah.
was, and he was a real rebel, a very true rebel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think he's still widely loved. I hear his name a lot in these hallowed halls around here, too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But lovable, lovable, you know, in spite of his.
So then, of course, the move to Toronto. What brought you north?
Wow, okay, we had a wonderful couple of places here. George's Spaghetti House and what was the other one? The uptown one. You know, there were two places that, and by that time, all of the places on 52nd Street no longer existed, you know. And I said, wow, I can play here, I can write during the day, and I can play at night. And that's what I was doing, which you couldn't do in L.A. In L.A., you'd have to, you know, you have to get onto where you conduct, you know, before they let you do anything really, you know. You had to make that move. So that was a weird time in L.A. because they had all these electric instruments that come into furthest time, you know. And so 3 guys would replace 65.
Right.
We lost a lot of work. So I don't know, yeah. And I came here and heard a bunch of the guys here playing, and I said, wow, why not give this a shot? Because L.A. was locked up with they were out of work, really.
Yeah. And you would come up here to play the Royal York with Carmen McRae, is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I came up with her.
That's okay, yeah.
And that's how I started, yeah.
Yeah. And then you, I mean, one of my favorite little bits of trivia about Gene Di Novi is that he lived at the King Edward Hotel. I mean, how groovy is that, to live at the hotel?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was quite a thing.
Yeah, I'll bet. I hope they didn't charge you a nightly rate, but yeah.
Yeah, that was wonderful, yeah.
And you played piano in the lobby there.
Yeah, I got my acts together, you know. I got my playing together because I was up to that point mostly writing, you know.
Right. So you became a solo pianist in Toronto, really.
And I loved it so much, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to? And of course, many famous people used to come to hear you. I love your story of playing for a certain classical piano player.
Oh yeah.
You want to tell that story?
Right. What was his name?
Horowitz.
Yeah. Well, I used to play in this place, and there was a wonderful guy who lived here, Bernie Pilch. You remember Bernie?
Yeah, so that's the father of Rob Pilch, if people know who he is in Toronto.
Right.
And Susan Pilch and David Pilch. Yeah.
The Toronto scene was happening for me by that time, you know. And yeah, I got my stuff together at the King Edward Hotel, living in the hotel.
Yeah, very cool.
You know. Yeah, wasn't that something? Oh.
That is something.
Woo.
Yeah, I'm envious, yes. Yeah, yeah. And so you were also doing CBC work at the time?
Yeah.
And you had a television show.
Yeah, I went right to work. And I was literally writing during the day and going to George's Spaghetti House and playing.
Right, so
I loved it. You know, writing all day and playing all night. Yeah.
And can you talk briefly about the TV show that you did?
Any TV shows?
The television show where you interviewed the composers?
Oh, yeah. I got 13 of them, was it there?
Yeah.
Mancini, Sammy Fain, Leo Robin.
Right.
See, I got heavily into songwriting, and I fell in love with the American song, really, because so that again accused everybody, you know, with this piano player. I went into that very heavily, and I started to do well with the songs,
Yes.
you know. Never had a great hit, but loved doing it, you know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's a shame that those aren't available, though. I mean, one day they'll show up on YouTube, but basically everybody who is a great American songbook composer who was still alive in the 1970s came up to Toronto and was interviewed by Gene. So there's a wonderful collection of that footage somewhere that needs to be seen by the public.
I have it somewhere.
Yes.
We'll look at it.
We'll look at it. Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. And of course, you also, I think around this time, as the name of that CD suggests, you had a bit of a renaissance. You were recording for a number of record labels, Sackville with John Norris. And
with you?
With me, that's me down there. I had the good fortune to record with you, with Ruby Braff.
Crazy Ruby Braff.
Great trumpeter Ruby Braff. And then recording for Mitsuo Jofu in Japan, right? And you went to Japan many times.
Yeah, a lot of records. We make a lot with Neil Swainson.
Yeah.
And Dave Young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Herbie Stewart and all sorts of people.
Yeah, we recorded Herbie Stewart.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can ever find a record, well, of course, you could get it through Marshmallow Records, which is Jofu, Mitsuo Jofu.
Yeah. Mitsuo Jofu Marshmallow Records.
You could get a beautiful Herbie Stewart record.
Yeah.
He was the essence of jazz. Yeah. The feeling he got was just so him. Yeah. Couldn't be anybody else. Not that it's all crazy stuff.
Right.
The taste that the man had, you know?
Nice, yeah.
It was wonderful.
And then I thought, I mean, you've had the good fortune, Gene, to be here, to be as a wonderful musician for many, many years. And obviously these are students who would like to certainly emulate a career in music. And so to put you on the spot, any advice musically for young music students?
Well, preparation is very important.
Yeah.
You know, it may not sound like improvisation when we finally get to it, but every great player prepared for his time, you know, or her time.
Yes.
And you do have a moment, you know. Before I used to, I mean, I love this instrument so much, you know, that I had to stay with it all of my life, you know.
Yeah.
But I love you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. So why don't we play one more? And I put up a couple of photos. I've had the good fortune to be able to know you and work with you for a long time, but also to bring you as recently as last year. I brought you to the Rex to play with a nice quartet. And then to bring you here today. If you like these stories that I've been telling you, there is a book that Gene wrote along with Jack Batten.
Yeah,
it's called... Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you can get it on the web.
Yeah, you can get it on Wattpad,
yes.
W-A-T-T pad. Wattpad, it's a digital platform for publication.
Yeah, it's all there.
And it's a very, very compelling read if you're interested in this history at all. So why don't we play I Like What I See in You? Do you want to talk about this tune at all? How'd this come about?
No, it's a fellow named Spence Maxwell, who was a wonderful lyric writer. Gave me the idea, gave me the title, yeah. Yeah, let's play it. It's called I Like What I See in You.
Great.
I see everything I'm after. Okay. What kind of an intro can I give you?
Yeah, Gene, that's why you're a success in show business. 1:15. I mean, it's amazing. Timing. That's why. Right on time. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. Gene will stick around for a little bit if you'd like to talk to him or shake his hand. But I really appreciate everybody coming out and celebrating the great Gene Di Novi. I hope we can do it in another 96 years. Thanks very much.